Ever wonder if, like, way out there are other civilizations who also love a good museum?
Well, get ready because today we're diving into some incredible museums. But not just any museums, right? We're talking museums filled with artifacts from across the galaxy. This is Exoplanetary Archaeology. And you know what? You've all given us the ultimate reading list, excerpts from a whole bunch of books detailing exhibits on this very topic.
And, instead of, just like dusty old pottery and stuff, we're talking remnants of like really advanced alien civilizations.
Oh, now you're talking my language.
We'll be your guides as we go through all these museum catalogs and try to shine a light on some of the most, I don't know about you, but I think mind-blowing discoveries.
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone listening, put on your explorer hats because we're about to uncover what these incredible finds tell us about the rise and fall of galactic civilizations. And we're going to start with one that, get this, left its mark on planets across the galaxy, including our own. We're talking about the first systems. Yeah, the first system. So what's fascinating about them is that we're talking tens of thousands of years ago,
Yeah.
like way before humans were building pyramids.
Right.
These guys were out there, and they clearly had technology beyond anything we've achieved today.
Okay, now we're talking. So the catalogs mention something called a dice furnace. And honestly, it sounds like something straight out of like, a sci-fi movie.
Yeah, yeah.
What's the deal with this dice furnace?
Okay, so imagine, right, being able to travel to a distant star system without actually physically crossing the distance.
Okay, yeah.
So essentially, that's what the dicey furnace seems to have allowed the first systems to do.
Wait, hold on. You're saying they could teleport across the galaxy. How is that even possible?
So the details, they're still being debated. But the main theory that's out there is that the dice furnace somehow rewrites reality itself.
What?
It makes the existence of a spacecraft at its destination not just possible, but inevitable.
Whoa, okay, that's mind-blowing. What kind of energy source would you even need for something like that?
That's one of the biggest mysteries surrounding the Diace furnace. Some scientists think it might tap into energy sources we haven't even dreamt of, like zero-point energy, or even like manipulating the fabric of space-time itself.
Okay, you've officially blown my mind. But let's get back to the artifacts themselves. The museum catalogs mention three planets in particular: Teegarden Star B, Kepler 452, and TRAPPIST 1b. Why these planets?
It seems the first systems didn't leave like sprawling cities or monuments on these planets. Instead, archaeologists are uncovering small pockets of incredibly advanced technology.
Okay.
On Teegarden Star B, for example, there's this underground repository, and it contains things like miniaturized phase engines.
Miniaturized phase engine. Okay, first dicey funuses, now this. Please tell me more.
Okay, so imagine wearing a device right on your wrist that could transport you across the galaxy.
Wow.
That's essentially what a phase engine is capable of, though, on a much larger scale.
Yeah.
Right. We think these miniaturized versions, they might have been personal transport devices.
Wow. I can barely get my GPS to work right, and they had wristwatch teleporters?
Quite a contrast, isn't it? And speaking of contrast, there's another interesting thing in the catalogs. Archaeologists working on TRAPPIST-1D uncovered a personal Land Rover. And get this, it bears a striking resemblance to the technology found on Teegarden's star.
Hold on. Are we talking about the same first systems here? The ones that were around tens of thousands of years ago?
The very same. And remember, TRAPPIST-1D, that's 27 light years away from Teegarden Star B.
Right.
It seems unlikely that these two planets, each with remnants of first systems tech, would be connected purely by chance.
It does feel like we've stumbled onto a connection here, like finding pieces of a puzzle scattered across the galaxy. So what does this all mean? Were the first systems even more widespread than we initially thought?
That's the million credit question, isn't it? And that's what makes these museum catalogs so tantalizing. They give these incredible glimpses into the past,
Yeah.
but they also leave us with more questions than answers.
Speaking of questions, there's another exhibit we need to talk about, one that reminds us that exploring the galaxy isn't always about, marveling at advanced technology. Sometimes it comes with a heavy price. Let's turn our attention to the Gliese disaster.
A stark reminder that not all archaeological discoveries are ancient wonders and technological marvels.
Okay, the Gliese disaster. This exhibit focuses on a coalition research facility completely destroyed. And get this, the culprit: an ancient automated defense system. Like, talk about a bad welcome mat, right?
Yeah, a sobering reminder of the risks involved when we, venture out into the galaxy. This facility was orbiting Gliese 1061c, a water world that, at first glance seemed like a perfect spot for archaeological research.
So what happened? Did they, like, trip a laser beam while they were dusting off some ancient alien treasure or something?
Not quite, no. The coalition researchers, they were part of this global seabed initiative. They were doing what they do best, scanning the ocean floor for anything, unusual.
Right.
And they found an underwater city, which they called New Petri, and then this other artificial structure down near the planet's south pole.
Sounds like a pretty good haul for a day's work, if you ask me. What's the disaster part? Why blow it all up?
Well, it turns out that structure near the South Pole, not just some ruins, no sir. This was a fully functional, automated defense platform. And when the researchers tried to, make contact, bam, their signals, interpreted as hostile.
Yikes. Talk about your communication breakdowns. Do we know anything about the weapons? I mean, how do you even destroy a whole space station from underwater?
Yeah, the catalogs, they don't really get into specifics about the weapon systems.
Mm.
But, this incident, it sparked a huge debate within the coalition.
Oh, I bet it did.
Some were all for, like, a retaliatory strike. Some even wanted to, like, neutralize the entire planet.
Oh, whoa, whoa, hold on. That seems just a tad extreme, doesn't it? Wiping out a whole planet.
You're not wrong. Luckily, cooler heads prevailed.
Yeah.
The focus shifted to, understanding these defense systems
Right, yeah.
and hopefully, preventing similar tragedies from happening in the future.
Right, right, of course. Okay, so that's Gliese 1061C. Off limits, I assume. What about the rest of that system? Did the coalition just kind of pack up and go home after all that?
Not entirely. They still had a presence on other planets in the Gliese 1061 system. And get this, there's mention of this fascinating artifact. They're calling it the Flying Dutchman of Gliese, orbiting 1061 path.
Okay, the Flying Dutchman of Gliese. All right, color me intrigued. Is it an actual ghost ship, like sailing through space?
Sadly, the catalogs are pretty tight-lipped on this one.
Mm-hmm.
We just know it was considered a significant artifact, and its fate after the research facility went well, boom, is unknown.
A true space mystery. Maybe we can find a deep dive on that another time. But for now, let's move on to our next stop. Kepler-62e. It's a planet with a very different story. One of, like, incredible biodiversity and the rise and fall of, get it, it's not just one, but 3 distinct intelligent species.
Unlike the first systems or even, the civilization we encountered on Gliese 1061c, Kepler-62e is really a testament to the idea that intelligent life, well, it can arise in many forms, and sometimes even on the same planet.
Okay, 3 different intelligent species on one planet. Now, that's what I call a party. So tell me more about these species. Who were they?
Well, one of the most fascinating and, extensively studied species on Kepler-62e is the Thane. Picture, if you will, a society of highly intelligent, hive-minded insects.
Hive-minded insect overlords. Okay, you had me at hive mind. So were they the ones responsible for all those, like, incredible structures described in the catalog?
It's not so straightforward. Well, the Thane, they had their own architectural achievements. The catalogs mention structures on Kepler-62e that predate the Thane hive's, known history by a significant margin. And these structures, they're incredibly intricate. They even have what appears to be like a maglev transport system, which is pretty wild.
So we're talking a pre-insect civilization. Technologically advanced, they just disappeared. Did the Thane just, like, move into a pre-furnished planet?
That's the mystery, isn't it?
Hmm.
It seems the Thane weren't the only intelligent life forms to, grace Kepler-62e.
Mm.
The catalogs refer to at least 2 other intelligent species. First, there's the Lacerta sapien residentia, which is a reptilian species. Then there's the Roeder sapien residentia, who are small, mammal-like creatures. And get this, they created this intricate subterranean civilization.
Lacerwadia and Rodensehum. Okay, are we sure those are real names and not something a scientist made up after one too many cups of coffee?
I assure you those are the official scientific names.
Mm.
And while their names might be a mouthful, their story is even more fascinating.
Mm.
So the Lacerta, based on skeletal remains and artifacts, seem to have been, pretty basic species. They relied mostly on, like, brute strength and rudimentary tools.
Okay, so your classic brawny lizard-like creatures.
Yeah.
Makes sense. What about the Roeder? You mentioned they built a whole civilization underground, right?
Right. The catalogs describe them as, adaptable and intelligent with these incredible senses of sight, smell, and hearing. They built these, like, sprawling underground cities with, complex social structures. They thrived for centuries.
Yeah.
But eventually, both the Lacerta and the Roeder vanished.
Vanished. So what happened? Was it some kind of planet-wide disaster? Did they, like, pick a fight with the wrong insect overlords?
It's actually a pretty tragic and somewhat ironic ending for both of them.
Okay.
The evidence suggests that the Roeder, in their quest to, like, control their environment. They were experimenting with technology to regulate atmospheric gases. And unfortunately, their experiments, well, they coincided with an attack by the Lacerda, which kind of threw their whole system into chaos.
You're telling me they accidentally caused their own extinction event?
Yeah, imagine a scrubber, right, designed to, like, remove CO2 from the atmosphere. Now, imagine that same technology in the wrong hands or with faulty programming, suddenly targeting oxygen instead.
Whoa, a planet-wide oopsie. Talk about bad timing, huh? But what about the Lacerda? Did they survive this atmospheric mishap? So the Rodair, they basically engineered their own extinction event, and during an attack by the Lacerda, no less. Talk about adding insult to injury. But what happened to the attackers? Did any of them make it?
Sadly, no. It seems the Lacerda were just as vulnerable to the sudden lack of oxygen as the Rodair were. According to the catalogs, the southern hemisphere of Kepler 62e was pretty much, well, wiped clean of both species, and it all happened remarkably fast.
Wow, that's rough. A sobering thought. It makes you wonder what other hidden dangers are lurking out there in the vast expanse of the galaxy.
Right, it does make you think. But on a more, positive note, let's move on to our final stop on this exoplanetary museum tour. We're headed to Tau Ceti F. It's a planet that offers a glimpse into a civilization that mastered something called bioelectric technology, which is pretty wild.
Bioelectric technology, does that mean they could control things with their minds? Jedi mind tricks and all that? Was it like a whole civilization of Yodas?
Not quite Jedi mind tricks, but you're on the right track. The catalogs describe these devices called bioelectric field shapers. They were used to modulate, get this, electromagnetic radiation.
Okay.
And the purpose of all that? To influence mental states.
Hold on. Influence mental states. So we're talking about a society of superpowered telepaths.
Not exactly telepathy. Imagine being able to enhance your focus, boost your creativity, or even alter your mood with the help of a small portable device. That's the kind of thing bioelectric field shaping could potentially do.
Okay, that's both really cool and a little creepy at the same time. But think about it, though. Imagine how productive we'd be if we could just dial up our focus. I'd never miss another deadline.
A tempting thought, no doubt.
Yeah.
But as with any powerful technology, there are always potential downsides. And the civilization on Tau Ceti Huff, they definitely had to deal with those downsides. The exhibits even mention something called the AI Wars.
AI wars. Okay, now that hits a little too close to home, don't you think?
A little too familiar, perhaps. But that's the point of studying exoplanetary archaeology, right? It's not just about digging up cool gadgets from the past. It's about understanding what paths these other civilizations took, their triumphs, their disasters, and using that knowledge to hopefully guide our own future.
Right, right. Learn from their mistakes. Don't repeat the same, cosmic oopsie moments. Got it. So are there any specific spots on Tau Ceti F that kind of, caught your eye?
Two places come to mind: Turdragon Falls and Oasis City.
Okay.
Turdragon Falls seems to have been a major hub for all this bioelectric tech,
Right.
while Oasis City, which is smack dab in the middle of the Hamiltonian desert, is described as this shimmering oasis that somehow made it through the AI wars relatively unscathed.
Okay, so Turdragon Falls, your bioelectric Silicon Valley, and Oasis City, your post-apocalyptic safe haven. Sounds about right.
A perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
But it gets even more interesting. Remember that hybrid communication device we talked about earlier? The one found on Gliese 581c that combined tech from 3 different worlds?
Yeah. The one that made me think those colonists were trying to start some kind of intergalactic group chat.
Well, it turns out that one of those components, the bioelectric shaper, it originated on Tau Ceti F.
Get out. So they were swapping tech across star systems. That's amazing.
Yeah. It really does seem that the colonists on Gliese 581c were really into integrating this tech into their communication systems, maybe trying to bridge the gap between species and all that.
Wow. A real effort at intergalactic diplomacy. So we've gone from ancient teleporting civilizations to underwater cities with a bit of a temper, hive-minded insects, accidental apocalypses, bioelectric mind expanders, and interspecies communication. That's quite the deep dive into the world of exoplanetary archaeology.
It certainly has been a fascinating journey.
It really makes you wonder, with all these advanced civilizations, all this incredible technology, they all seem to face some kind of downfall eventually. What can we learn from them? How can we, as we venture further out into the cosmos, avoid making the same mistakes?
That's the question, isn't it? And one I think we all need to contemplate, not just as explorers, but as citizens of the galaxy.
Well, on that note, we wrap up our deep dive into the mysteries of exoplanetary archaeology. We've journeyed across vast distances, encountered wonders and warnings, and hopefully gained a bit of perspective on our own place in the grand scheme of things. It makes you realize the universe is full of incredible secrets just waiting to be discovered. But as we uncover them, we must always remember the lessons these civilizations teach us. Until next time, keep exploring.